it wasn't really a matter of winning because the Valen were constantly losing planets, and the campaign would shift to different planets as they lost those. So it was really about surviving. And then as the war progressed, still in the early war, I only have a small sample in the middle here of Dog Company. So we stuck to very light infantry, right? So jungle guys, they're not rolling around in tanks, they're not having heavy armor. And that's kind of why I put the APC back here, because it elicits that sense of we're going to all jump in this truck. It's going to drive us somewhere and dump us off, and then we're going to fight on our feet. And these guys, again, this is when the Valen are still getting their teeth kicked in. And the reason we introduced these guys was because we brought somebody else into reality who was very D&D 3.5 and 4E and very, my character can do all sorts of things and gets magic sword.
Yeah, this man in particular was interesting in terms of how he played with us. We were just like, he doesn't quite jive. He just wants but he wants to be the Snake Eyes in the D&D campaign. You know, like he wants to be like, and we're just like, it's not about that. It's really more about like a unit, and they're all running around together. And even though this is my main guy, he's just a guy. You know, he's not like flipping in front of everyone and like running ahead with a sword and cutting everyone up and being like, I saved the day. Like, and so it was very that kind of gameplay.
Yes, that right there encapsulates the reality of it. Is that your character is not Luke Skywalker that's going to blow up the Death Star at the end and win the war.
He's not.
Your character is just one person trying to make sure that people around him don't die as quickly as the enemy wants them to. So I did leave a representation of his character here. He's got a little paper map, which back in the day, like I think I just printed out like a MapQuest or very early Google Maps on there. And again, mud on the boots and the knees. And then
I love that we used to print out Google Maps.
And you can see it's still very olive drab, relatively simple. This is Old Man Pops, which is just Footloose reused. But again, just these guys picking up rifles and like, hey, we're in this and let's get going, right? I gutted most of this unit as they either evolved or transitioned. This is the only sampling I have left in there too. So that was Dog Company. Joe wasn't entirely invested to that. Griffin had moved out of Jungle Punks and gone into our elite team, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
So I had to transition out of Dog Company.
I was invested as long as our third-party friend was invested, but he wasn't very invested. Mike, let's just call him Mike. Without Mike, you know, like, so what's the point?
But to show you just some of like what I'm talking about, these are rosters that I would make up. And you can see for each of these units, like it starts at the very top left with who the senior commanders and NCOs are. And those are kind of NPCs that would trickle in, either give orders or cause friction. And then it would break it down by platoon, by squad, and they each had functions in there too. Like there's riflemen, there's machine gunners, there's the LAX, which if you remember, Joe, the reason why we called an LAX, it's a light armored, the X stands for Xenosuit, because they would use the carapaces from dead bugs and mix them with technology, and our operators would get all super allergied and come out like high and rashes.
Black suits, yeah. Oh man, so again, this is gonna happen a lot, but my memory is gonna be like, Dom's gonna be like, hey, remember when we used to do that? And I'm gonna go, oh yeah. It's because your memory for retaining this stuff, mainly because you made it all up, but also like your memory for retaining little details is insane. And I'm just gonna be like, those were people, and I remember them. So my guy in Dog Company was this little guy right here. Yeah, let's see. Shockwave, version 2. And then I changed out the head. Actually, I didn't even change out the head. The head's original. I just changed the helmet so it looked different. And it wasn't that big faceplate thing. But I mean, you know, that's just a Yancey that came out. Yancey. That's just the Shockwave version 2 that came out later on. They had redone the plastic. So he was much less bright blue. It's like a really dark, muted navy blue. And I was like, oh, even more realistic version of Shockwave version 2. I love that toy. So yes.
So that's the 2-pack version that came out at Toys R Us.
Again, see how you remember that? I don't know that.
Yeah, because the original one I actually have over here, and he is bright blue. That's the original one, and then the one that came out in Toys R Us.
He's faded. Look at that.
This one here.
Yeah.
And then I did a wash on this one here. I don't know if you can really tell.
That was a great body though. Perfect for urban assault
super.
troops or like urban warfare guys.
So
I mean, he was basically a SWAT police type uniform, but
the drug enforcement kind of phase that G.I. Joe went through. Yeah. So and that kind of transitioned from we went from Dog Company because like, oh, it's simple, Alpha, Bravo, Delta, and they would come up with like, the names that they had, like what's the 101st, the Easy Company, right? So that was very classic. But then I was like, well, let's be a little more imaginative because like people can just name their units wherever they want. So when I was like, we're gonna break out of Dog Company, we're gonna do like an airborne company or something cool that's more specialized than just jungle or foot infantry. Let's change it up a little bit. Let's add some more tech into this or some more hardware. And the ideas, the names we got, again, were very much like Super Cool Guy 3000 Death Kill.
Oh, you mean from Mike?
Yeah, and
because it was like, his unit. That's the key that we're kind of missing here. Dog Company, if you pull that roster up again, the name at the top was Lieutenant Pliskin, which is straight out of Snake Plissken, or Escape from LA, Escape from New York.
Yeah.
No, it's just like, come on, man. So you went to him and you said, hey, what would you like to name? What would you like to name it? Go on.
In kind of a, I don't know, not mature move, I was like, okay, well, let's rebel against that. And instead of going with super cool name, we're going to go with the very opposite. And we named our company, or our platoon of the company, Pixies. So they were called the Pixie Company.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair,
I mean, you were just teasing him, but also he deserved it.
In the ironic way, a lot of units will do that too, right? They'll like,
oh yeah, for sure, yeah. But so we were all about the subversive idea. Like Joker Company is Joker Company because it's just stupid and like it's not. They have a bunch of smiley faces all over their gear. It looks ridiculous, but it's cool because it's not cool. I don't know.
Exactly. Counterculture kind of thing. So, so what we introduced here, instead of just having regular boot infantry who are just struggling to survive, this kind of transitioned more to the mid to later war with Pixies, where the Valen were getting better tech. They were investing, they were unifying, they became a federation now where they're all like, hey, this single state thing does not work. Or these little unions don't work. We're going to combine our resources together. So now all of a sudden you had an entire nation dumping their resources into there. So now they started stepping up their games. Compared, like Joe had said, like, hey, that Viper next to that green guy, like, there's no contest. Now it's starting to become a contest. This is just an airborne medic. And I took that crappy pilot.
I actually like that body though. But
he came with the light up jet, but the body's great. And I wanted a more subtle medic. And I glued a radio on there, and I glued a pouch onto him. So he's got a lot of kit and accessories going on there. Look at that thing hanging off that belt's pretty cool too. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But they're stepping up their game. They're starting to compete, and the war started tilting towards the other side. And now the Valen were going on the offense. Even though you guys were on the offense, was it a cakewalk, Joe?
Oh no, because as much as the Valen were like upping their technology and going, oh, we need to start like really upping our game here. The other side is too.
It's very comparative to when the U.S. invaded Europe in World War II, right? They're throwing Sherman tanks out there, and they've got a ton of them, but the Germans had Panzers and Tigers. So like, I got 15 Shermans to your 2 Panthers. At the end of the day, I'm going to win. That's kind of where we're going with, was like, the Federation is finally caught up, and we have tons of money because we're traders. We're just going to throw bodies in the fire. But you can see where at the end of a game, we'd come in with a roster, and then I'd write wounded. These are all the people who got wounded. Here's how they died. Here's everything that happened. So like, I would take chicken scratch notes while the game was going on, just so we could remember, like, oh my gosh, what happened to all these people? Because we come back the next game, like, where is everybody?
Yeah. It kind of was that kind of scenario where so many things, man, we had rosters deep filled with people. So when I say I don't remember someone's name, it's not because I'm like, I don't really like that character. It's because I'm like, I had 40 characters running around, like kind of in multiple units over multiple. And I'm like, oh man, that's why we had all these rosters to keep everyone straight. It's funny. Your rosters are clean. Mine always said like guy with this head and this body with this weapon, you know, kind of like yours are just name, rank, and like what they're carrying. And I was like, it's this guy he's got the smiley face and like, you know, like kind of thing. I was always jotting notes of like what amalgam of G.I. Joes it was to create that character so I could keep it. But the hilarious part is that you still have binders of these old rosters and you're like, oh, let me scan them in real quick.
So as a background here, I've got Joker's, you know, binder over here. When we started transitioning, so this is Dark Lawn, which was one of Joe's main antagonists, and that's the binder all about the campaign where he was the commanding general that fought against what later would be actually fought against the Pixies. Like it was one high commander, and then his armies were fighting his command.
There's old Griffin there. Look at
Griffey with his sleeve, which we actually talk about in another video, and then this gorgeous ooh la la piece of artwork there, man.
Look how much better I am.
Who made that? Yeah, comparatively. You got a manga style Griffin.
Hey, that's not bad for 1819
details though, man. This is on a canvas print too, and so it's got a lot of shine on it. But Joe's
shine on there.
Artist, I'm the writer, you know what I mean? But then there's this significant little
look at that old drawing. Look at that
here.
There's Stripey before he died.
Yeah. So
that's right. You called him Zuka earlier. That was that when we were making up names, you're just like, instead of Bazooka, his name will just be Zuka. I mean, it helped us mentally at the time because it was when we were transferring over from like, these are G.I. Joes to like,
yes.
Why am I calling this guy Duke? I should name him, you know?
The gradual transition out of the G.I. Joe naming convention of like, we were fighting Big Boa as a general. We were fighting Crocmaster. We're like, hey, these are silly. We probably should come up with real names just so we do our guys. So we can.
I mean, we're calling him Big Boa for gosh sake.
So we had a robust and in-depth reality, as we like to call it, and the fact that there were named people that weren't just stolen IP from a cartoon and toys we had in our childhood added to that lore and that reality. And you can see back there we've got an E-frame because being very space fleet focused, E-frames are interatmospheric, so they could come out of the ships and come down the atmosphere. So that was a major support we had the G.I. Joes. And we also really love playing with Exo Squad toys.
We had talked about the size discrepancies between like the original guys and like some of the newer ones. So look how much taller he is. And it, it's not like a huge discrepancy, but it's there.
It's slightly jarring.
So here's the key though, with the E-frames, those guys were tiny. I would say if your brain is accepting that early on, when you get to the point where we have some of these newer Joes that are filtering in, the discrepancy in height there doesn't bother me at all.
True. And like, here's a comparison with a guy standing next to the suit. And we have G.I. Joes be the pilots for these E-frames, not in the suit. Because as soon as you put them in that cockpit, it ruins that suspension of disbelief. Later, I kind of started being like, okay, this is a different race. And they have better reflexes. So they're smaller, but they're able to be better pilots. So that's why they're small. So we just integrated the Exo Squad characters, most of the Neo Sapiens, in amongst the G.I. Joes. And that kind of helped also flesh out more alien races to our very human-centric world.
The Neo Sapiens, we could, suspension of disbelief, say like, as opposed to the cartoon where originally they're huge comparatively to humans in the Exo Squad cartoon. In our game, they were small and engineered to be pilots, like fit into small cockpits and stuff.
You're right.